そんじゃ始めるか、ロキシーちゃんの歓迎会。
まるで夢のようだ。トラックに惹かれて死にかけてる俺の。
One key feature of Mushoku Tensei's stunning visuals is the use of film grain, which are these random small particles and speckles most commonly seen in old films when celluloid was still a thing. As old anime was photographed frame by frame, grain was a natural byproduct alongside the slight shake from the misalignment during the scanning process. It's a feature that Mushoku Tensei replicates, meant to bring us back to a nostalgic era when times seemed more secure. And there's a warm fuzzy feeling that usually accompanies retro aesthetics like this. What you may have missed is how film grain adds to the narrative. It also means that what we see in Mushoku Tensei isn't real. What we see is merely footage being captured by the camera. The implication here is that our main character has never really fully accepted himself as Rudeus in the new Isekai reality. And we see this dissociation across the series in various ways. Whenever he thought of his parents, he never really called them mom or dad, referring to them by names Zenith and Paul instead. In the meeting with Hitogami, his image of himself takes that of the previous life. Even when the first turning point happened, he didn't freak out or seriously worry about his family. And in his own words,
はっきり言って、僕はこれまで遊び気分でした。
reality to Rudeus is his past life as a 34-year-old NEET. Notice the lack of film grain whenever he thinks about his past. This is aside from the Japanese calligraphy hung on the school's wall as he was being bullied. The words lively, harmony, and cheerful were shown, a stark contrast to what is happening. The graydiness of the paper reflects the fiction of lively and cheerful students coexisting in harmony with each other. Or maybe this is just how traditional calligraphy paper is supposed to be. If someone from the Mushoku Tensei production team is somehow watching this, please just confirm this interpretation so I can feel good about myself. Through the 23 episodes of the first season, Rudeus' disconnect with the Isekai reality is another constant struggle the character face. Even through the many hardships and to a point of almost dying, it never really felt like Rudeus expressed very strong emotions. That is, until the penultimate episode of the season, when Aris left him.
あれなんでわけがわからない。あれなんで振られたいや、捨てられたあれ家族あれ
By the time the Mushoku Tensei web novel was written in late 2012, many tropes were already being codified into the isekai genre. For Rudeus, this isekai fantasy world was supposed to be his wish fulfillment following those tropes. The isekai script was supposed to be him becoming nearly godlike and having a harem. Yet, he remains weaker than many other characters or enemies in the show, even if he is definitely not a weakling. And at the end of 13 years, far from having a harem, he finds himself alone, yet again. Because he was unable to understand Aris' intentions, Rudeus was left devastated. This was his true first turning point as a character, who has only viewed everything thus far as an outsider. As the title of the episode implies, the dream of Rudeus Grey Rat he was watching had only just begun to set in as reality. Regrets and mistakes of his past life would come back to haunt him as he wondered what went wrong in this lifetime. In his previous life, most of his family had essentially already given up on him, referring to him as the guy on the second floor. Among his regrets were how he wasn't able to give anything back to his mother, who believed in him until the end. As thoughts of giving up surfaced and he went to sleep, he had a dream about the past. One that is in his current reality as Rudeus Grey Rat.
大好きよ。
This is when he came to the realization that there is still something he can do for his mother in this current reality. This is the very moment Rudeus' past life is finally depicted in the same film grain texture, signifying that Rudeus is ready to put aside his past life and put a step forward for his current one. We then follow a raindrop vaguely shaped and shaded like an eye as it drops to the ground, symbolizing destruction of the perspective through a lens. This leads to the second ending theme playing to show the transition in Rudeus' mentality. From being trapped in his grainy reality to opening up a new world of possibilities. A stark contrast to the first ending theme where Rudeus is merely watching behind a window, where nearly everything is covered in fume grain. The first portion of the second ending theme was also skipped in the final episode of the season, which showed his feelings as an outsider. Through the major events in the series, he was always just peering through the window. And in the adventures with Ares and Regent, his silhouette is cut out, a simple but effective way to show that he felt out of place. It's worth noting that the Isekai world isn't grainy, but the inside of Rudeus' window is. During the transition from the first season to the second, Rudeus had already realized that the Isekai world is indeed a reality that he must learn to accept. It is the traumas and past life within himself that he must learn to let go. After opening the window, the lack of fume grain in the second ending theme is telling us that he has finally accepted his new Isekai identity as Rudeus Greyrat. Lastly, the short reveals itself to be from a book, a highly stylized autobiography, or indicating to the audience that this is a work of fiction. The meta-narrative that this is a work of fiction might seem like a, duh thing to say, but in the context of an isekai, hammers the message of the story to the audience. With the real world being unkind and disconnected, it's not hard to imagine why viewers constantly seek out the isekai drug. An ultimate escapist power fantasy where conflicts resolve themselves and past mistakes or regrets no longer matter. In these isekai stories, the main character is usually meant to be the audience self-insert character, sort of creating an alternate life in our minds. Rudeus' past life can be seen as the worst version of the isekai junkie, a depressed, unsociable lazy schlub who eats junk food and watch anime or play video games all day long. Someone who thinks of themselves as scum of the society and tends to spiral into a prison of self-depreciating thoughts, even if the surrounding people might not necessarily think so. Eventually, these negative thoughts take over their mind and they start having little attachment to their own reality. Society has no place for me, and if society thinks I am scum, I might as well become scum. By reminding the audience that this is a work of fiction, it tells us that this worst version of ourselves and the alternate life of the isekai protagonist is merely something in your mind. Regardless of what could have happened in that alternate life, and trying to do better is the only way to improve your life. But just because you started a New Year's resolution of going to the gym doesn't mean that you will suddenly become fit tomorrow. You still have to put in the work to go regularly in the entire year. Just because you tell yourself to quit smoking or alcohol or pornography doesn't mean that you can just quit the next day. This theme of constant self-improvement is shown even in other characters in the story. Ghislaine started off as a disgrace to the village, and by her own separate adventure way before the story of Mushoku Tensei, went from refusing basic lessons and training to becoming a well-respected swords king. And even then, she still constantly seeks to improve herself by learning basic magic and arithmetics. Hall needed some encouragement from Zenith and Geese, but the willingness to try to be better pushed him to keep searching for his family and make up with Rudeus to be a better father. And the want for instant gratification is why, I think, Mushoku Tensei's depiction of Rudeus' perviness received much discussion. People expected Rudeus to change in the snap of a finger like in your typical isekai power fantasy, even if it goes against the reality or the moral of the story, to accept your current reality and work towards a better self. Rudeus may have had the advantages of magical talent and being born in a noble family, but the actual learning of several new languages, working as a tutor, expanding his mana pool by practicing, and swordsman training was something that he had to do consciously every single day in order to improve. Likewise, his perviness is something that has to be worked on bit by bit, especially since this is a byproduct of having spent the last 20 years of his past life as a shut-in and learning social interaction only from fiction and the internet. Mushoku Tensei was always written for the isekai junkies It was never meant for the normies who somehow managed to have a completely healthy mind in this day and age. It was never meant for those who can't show patience for a fictional character, since they are even less likely to show patience or sympathy for a real person on a self-destructive path to be like past Rudeus. It was also never meant for the people who will never try to better themselves or are unable to recognize other people's efforts. But as an isekai junkie who watched Rudeus' past and thought, holy shit, I can sue Studiobind for taking my real life likeness, I can appreciate the sentiment to make the world a better place, day by day, bit by bit.